Hello and welcome to Nagasaki in Japan. I'm here for the Gardening World Cup. 11 designers from around the world brought in to design 11 fantastic gardens. Let's go in and have a look. Just look at this. It's the most beautiful Islamic garden. Tiled floor makes it so cool. It's blue and white inside. There's a lovely shady atmosphere in here. The lattice work windows cast a beautiful patterned shade on the floor. It's full of lovely cool planting in pinks and whites, all full of cosmos and roses, and it's just lovely in here. To us, of course, cosmos and roses look very English, but you've got to remember we're in Japan here. Everything reads very differently. To people here looking in, this looks incredibly exotic. It's very unusual. This is another garden where you look through the holes from one end of the garden to the other. This is Dulce et Decorum Est by James Basson, who's here for France, but he's actually a British man living in France. This is a garden full of symbolism. You start from a very small hole in the far wall, then you go through and the damage gets a little bit worse, until by the time you get to the end wall, which is the one I'm standing next to, there's a great jagged hole ripped through the centre. It's ruined and wrecked. Now this, of course, is a symbol for the sort of damage that war does to people's lives. It might start from a small cause, but in fact the effects are far-reaching and, of course, tragic for all concerned. There's a third meaning, of course, which is the passage of a bullet through a material. The entrance hole might be small, but of course the exit hole is large, and that's where the damage is caused. As a garden, it's quite uncompromising. The walls are very hard. It's quite industrial looking in places. There are these very smooth, very modern platforms across the water, like stepping stones where you have to pick your way across. The furniture too, it's 1950s, it's very, it's not particularly comfortable, and this is not a very comfortable garden to be in, to be quite honest. But the planting is the saving grace of this garden. It's soft and gentle, quite wild. You won't find very much colour in this garden, but it's soothing, especially after the terrible message of the rest of the garden. And it's a very thoughtful and gentle place to be. This is a garden that envelops you as soon as you walk down into it. It's got a rather complicated Maori name, which I won't try and pronounce, but it means roughly regenerating through water. And water is a really important part of this garden, with pools on either side of the path as you come in. It's by Xanthi White, who's from New Zealand, and it does feel certainly very New Zealandy in the way that it's so jungly and full of plants. Every wall is clothed with plants. These wonderful vertical plantings that she's got here are just dripping with foliage and ferns and orchids inside. There's yellow and white orchids, and on the outside just a little splash of colour from those yellow daisies. This is the garden created by Kazuyuki Ishihara. He might be a familiar name to you because he's exhibited at Chelsea several times. He's won many golds there. He's come here and won another one, and you can see why. I mean, what a fabulous garden. It's a very classical Japanese style garden. We've got the top pool with that beautiful pine sweeping down to the water. From that top pool, we've got a cascade pouring down into the bottom pool with the stepping stones across. And there's a journey through this garden. You come in up the steps, all the way across the stepping stones, and then you climb up into the tea house at the top. It's got a green roof of sedums and moss, and the guttering, love the guttering. It's bamboo, and very beautiful, very finely crafted, and beautiful to see. A very finely judged garden, won the People's Choice Award, and very deservedly so. This is one of my favourite gardens in the whole show. It's called Peace Blooms in the Forest by Hiroshi Cherishita. It's one of the Japanese gardens. There are 2 or 3 Japanese gardens here, and to be quite honest, Japanese doesn't always do it for me, but Oh my goodness, this has completely converted me. This is the most beautiful thing. Just look at those walls. They're created to follow the techniques of ancient Japanese castle walls. Every single one of those stones was hewn by hand by Japanese stonemasons working on this garden in slippers, about a dozen of them, in absolute silence. It was the most beautiful thing. Unsurprisingly, it got the Best Craftsmanship Award at the show, and of course a gold medal. It's absolutely exquisite. There are just a little splash or two of colour here and there in here. There's the salmon-coloured flowers just pouring their way down through the rocks there. We don't have any flower names here. The one thing that is rather strange about gardening in Japan is that they don't use Latin names. So it's very difficult to identify the plants here because there are no names that people can give you which are in any way anything that we would understand. The other thing I adore about this garden are these little tiny dragonflies set into the stone. Each one of them was carved from a pebble and set into the stone by the stonemasons. They are absolutely delightful and they just bring the whole thing to life. There are little bits of wood set in moss, a very, very traditional Japanese technique of course, and these lovely maples and beautiful trees selected for their form. It's absolutely wonderful and I think a very deserved gold medal winner. This is Jo Thompson's garden, the Butterfly Effect. Jo Thompson is another Chelsea regular. She was there this year with her lovely caravan, Doris. This is a quite different garden. It's inspired by the Peace Museum in Nagasaki, which of course commemorates the day the atomic bomb went off in the city. It's a garden meant to make you think and wonder what it is that makes us do such things to each other. It's somewhere where I think the juxtaposition of the beauty of the flowers and the starkness of reality, and particularly the sad reality here in Nagasaki, is very beautifully played out. So here we are at a little slice of England in Japan. This is Serenity by Richard Myers. It's such an English garden. It's full of cosmos and gentle colours and pastels. The planting is so soft and so soothing, full of dancing flowers, these lovely, beautiful cosmos held above the rest of the planting. This is a space for relaxing and for entertaining. You can see that there's this lovely table down the middle with set for a meal or a party al fresco in the evening. At the back is that lovely sculpture. In the evening that's lit up, there's a bulb behind it, and it really is a lovely sight, somewhere where you can imagine passing a lovely summer's evening with friends and a glass of wine or two. This is such a thoughtful, moving garden. Mother's Sewing Basket by Ji-hye Hwang of Korea. It's a nostalgic look back at a time when people may have been poor, but they appreciated the value of community and family. There's a sewing motif pervading the garden, from the iconic needles spearing the wall to the little basket of fabric on a bench inside. If you look closely, you'll see it's making a subtle reference to the garden itself. Everything is on a domestic scale here, from the tiny shoes under the bench to the gardening tools and the pans set into the wall. And there are little touches like this coloured flower set into the paving. It's exquisite. And the big show gardens are just the half of it. There are the exquisite small gardens, created mainly by Japanese designers with just 15 square metres to play with. You can browse through dozens of trade stands and stroll round the magnificent grounds of the Haustenbosch Palace itself, a faithful copy of the Dutch royal family's residence, complete with fountains and parterres. The Gardening World Cup may be smaller than many gardening shows, but it has big ambitions and punches well above its weight. There aren't many places in the world you can see the work of top-drawer designers from the US, Spain, the UK and Japan within a few hundred yards. So if you're ever heading over to this corner of Japan, time your visit to the end of September and make the detour to Nagasaki. I promise, you won't be disappointed.